Steve Barnes,
Yes.
welcome to Landlord
Thanks
Confidential.
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Let's start with softball.
Yeah.
Where were you born?
San Diego, California.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the few, the proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What brought you to the desert then?
Job transfers, really. I've been a corporate guy all my life, so primarily in dentistry, dental implants, and then later on CAT scan machines to do dental implants, so 3D imaging. So as I moved up and started managing people, they'd move me around. So did a year in Vegas, I was in Orange County, and then I came over here in '08. So I've been here, 20 years.
Oh, wow. This is home for a long term now
16.
then? Or?
Yeah, true. We actually toyed with the idea of going to Texas because we have two children in college down there. But we went down there 4 or 5 times and just couldn't get the vibe. We just couldn't, great people, great state. I just don't see I don't see myself there. So, and we have everything we want here. So, in Arizona.
Yeah. So you're a client of ours. You're a
Yeah.
real estate investor. Tell us about your experience with real estate. How did you get started in real estate?
So, originally, my grandfather was a painter in San Diego. He painted houses. They moved out from Michigan, so this is late 40s. And he and his brother started Van Stel Real Estate in San Diego in the late 40s, early 50s. And my grandpa was a painter, so he painted these places. So my earliest memory of real estate was having like a scraper on the side of a fascia board, and he managed to acquire maybe a duplex or a couple of duplexes over the years in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and he wasn't a big sophisticated guy, but there were other brothers there, and they had Van Stel, long since gone Van Stel Real Estate, and that was my first exposure. Was going to the dump with my grandfather with all sorts of refuge from these gutted out duplexes in Pacific Beach and Bay Park and Mission Beach and those areas. So just kind of doing that work. My parents, my dad and mom stayed in the industry and grew it. They stayed in it and really got into it in the REO RTC collapse of the 90s. What was that?
80s, yeah.
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah.
When they all went back to the bank, and the banks were just paying people to take them off the ledger. The bank doesn't want to be in the property management business at all. And so they began to buy REO RTC properties in Oceanside and Fallbrook. 3 of them were west of the 5, right by the Oceanside Pier. And if I told you what they paid for them, it's kind of laughable. But they were beat up, So my experience, I worked for them for 3 years, and I lived in these buildings.
So you move in and renovate them, or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm not a skilled. I'm not a contractor, and I don't have any kind of big skills.
Yeah.
I can turn a screwdriver, and I can change a wax ring on a toilet, I can, or a quick set lock or something. But yeah, I moved in and I lived in these properties, and I found some things and I observed some things because of that. And one was that an owner presence there attracts better tenants.
Yeah.
2, you're able to observe density much more accurately. It's not just seeing how many automobiles. And my dad was big on density. Like he wanted as few people in the property. We bought a 13-unit complex in Oceanside, and I think when we bought the building, it had, I think it had like 60 people in it. Like something
in 13 units, 60 people.
Preposterous. There were actually people in the garages.
Wow.
And I mean, this wasn't that uncommon in Oceanside, circa 1995, 1997. But over time, nobody's on the lease. Nobody's on the we don't even know who's in these units when we bought the thing. So I got seasoned at moving. Getting the density to an appropriate level that was safe for everybody, getting the accurate people on the lease,
So what did that look like? You would just go unit by unit and introduce yourself to these people?
Yeah,
and try to
yeah,
get them on leases and...
I'd go through and I'd say, hey, we need to get a head count here, and I need to have everybody who's living in here on the lease, and here's a copy of the lease that I have on file, and are you Bob? And they're not Bob. So
Who's Bob? No, who that is.
There's no
That was
Bob.
3 tenants ago.
Bob's gone.
Okay.
But he told me I could stay here.
Yeah. Yep.
So that was my, again, not that sophisticated, but that was my kind of exposure to commercial income property real estate.
Yep.
And I think the fact that my dad was such a great source of how to do things, right? Like, I'd pull out ranges like stoves, right? And we'd turn a unit, and his motto was, I think I've told this to AJ, I think he works for you guys.
Yep.
I've said, yeah, whenever we turn a unit, it's an opportunity to upgrade. That comes right out of my dad's mouth.
Exactly.
And he goes, we got to do something to make it better.
Absolutely.
Better kitchen cabinets, better flooring. Let's replace the refrigerator and stove, put a nice hood in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's redo the bathroom. So, do something.
That's how
And
you
then-
attract the people you want in your property.
That's right. It's an opportunity we only have for 2 weeks.
Right.
So let's do something and spend some dough.
Mm-hmm.
That was my dad. He also would acquire and store all this stuff he would need, like extra refrigerators, and he loved to turn units, like a parking deck that was underground. He'd wall off one and make it a storage receptacle for ranges, refrigerators, quick set stuff you would buy. You'd get cheap on the cheap, or you'd get stuff, and he somehow got this stuff. But back to the oven, I'd pull the thing out. I did this multiple times. I'd pull the thing out. I'd clean it down, sterilize, clean it down like TSP or whatever, get that appliance paint at Home Depot, pull all the burners off of it, clean it, knobs you can replace, they're cheap.
Yeah.
And then I'd repaint it with the appliance paint, put new knobs on it, clean the coils and everything, put it back in there and look great. And this is C grade, B minus,
Right.
C grade. This is not La Jolla.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thankfully. Thankfully. So that's my exposure. And then when my parents passed away 3 years ago, and I only ever wanted to do income property with any extra income I ever had or have.
Right.
And because I feel comfortable in it, and I feel comfortable, I think I told you this, I feel most comfortable in C grade. Another thing my dad would always say that you're always going to have tenants in C grade.
Always.
Yeah.
They don't
Always.
build new C grades, so
They
you're not
don't.
competing against new builds.
It's what I feel comfortable with, what I can go through and look at the P&L, what I am all about. I mean, you and I have talked a little bit about, well, hey, go over and do 5 units in Scottsdale or something. It's a different. I think it's a bit of a different business. Maybe
Definitely
you would
is.
know.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it
I
is.
think it's a different business
All
model.
different animal, yeah. You
Yeah.
obviously have your experience. You know what you're doing in the C-class model, so...
Yeah, and we did great, and the people, we got good tenants. They're great people, and I told you and I told AJ, we offer a clean, well lit domicile at a fair price.
Right.
That was my dad too. Clean, well lit, fair price.
Yep.
So
Don't
unfortunately,
raise-
a lot of times those folks are like taken advantage of, right? Where they're sitting in these properties and nobody's taking care of them, right? So if you're the landlord that's actually taking care of them and repairing things when they fix them,
Yeah,
you build
for
that
sure.
loyalty and they actually do stick around long
Yeah,
term.
as I shared with you guys earlier, I'm a renter now.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm renting temporarily, so I move around the rental house very carefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't raise the rent if you don't have to. That came
Yeah.
from my dad. Hey, I'm gonna get. What are you gonna get? You get $50 a month. You're gonna get
Cost of turnover is
$600
much
a
more.
year,
Yeah.
and you think you're gonna recoup your management fees or whatever by. Well, yeah, you might lose the tenant. Number one, number two, it's not exactly if you don't need to, it doesn't make them happy. So.
Mhm.
So your dad wasn't hiring property managers; he was using you mostly in these communities, right? to
He
look into
used
shit.
me until I got married, and then I got married, and I couldn't live in the.
Your wife didn't
units
want to be in the
anymore.
C-class communities, right? She's like, I need a house in a
It
backyard.
was a miracle she dated me.
You got her to live in one of those with you?
It was a miracle. We
You
met
must
at a
be a
New
real
Year's Eve
keeper.
party at the Del Mar racetrack, and A few weeks later, she came over to meet me. We were going to go up to Los Angeles for something, and I said, "Yeah, just drive down, and it's going to be a little weird when you walk in." And I heard this knock. She wasn't quite sure this was the right
She's
place.
like, I don't know who's going to answer.
I
this
opened the door, and they were really big, spacious one-bedroom units in Oceanside. They were really nice, and we made them even nicer. And now that building, I saw it about a month ago, completely redone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
Yeah, you can hit the ocean. The ocean's about a par 5 away.
Wow.
Someone probably dumped $250,000 into each unit.
For
At least.
sure,
Yeah,
they're
at least,
really nice. And
Yeah.
I think he bought that originally. I think my dad bought it for $600,000. It was, I don't know, 15 units or something like that. I'm reaching here, but yeah.
So was he a full-time investor, or was he doing a day job too while he was doing this?
No, he originally was in the service station business, and they got out of that. They sold their last service station, and they pulled a transfer into the like a 1031 type thing into income property, and then so that's all he did.
That was.
And
his,
they went from that, and they kept 1031ing, which is that's one thing that I did see in my parents was wildly stressful,
trying to find another property within 45
Yeah,
days,
that's
and then
very
trying to find a good
head,
deal on it.
and then
it's
they
tough.
know you got the gun. And
Yep.
I don't know. I just
Takes
To
away
save
some of
some
your negotiating
taxes.
power.
yeah.
Yeah.
You, like, okay, hey, the brokers like they're on the back end of a 10. They got 12 days left, and and it just
You're not
doesn't
getting
sound
anything on the Benzer at that point.
But he did really good. I mean, they moved up. I mean, they when they passed away, they had 110 units right by Petco Park in downtown San Diego. That area is gentrified and continues to gentrify. They had 75 units over by San Diego State. And then as they were getting older, they wanted less stress. They had a couple of triple nets on Walgreens.
Oh, okay.
Super.
Yeah.
And I even looked into that too. It seems a little weird for me. I'm more comfortable with the duplex, triplex, fourplex, 10plex, that thing.
Yeah.
They were doing value add before value add was probably even a term then, right? Like, did he get that inspiration purely from his dad, or like
No,
who was his mentor?
His mentor, I think he just naturally had the gift for making money. I don't know. Poor family in Mississippi, Gulfport. Him and his brother didn't even have shoes until they were like 8 they were. I think he was very frugal.
Frugal, yeah.
They were very frugal. So if we need to repair something, he didn't like to repair anything. Unless it was non-functional, then he would repair it. But if it had, I switched out all my air conditionings on my home. I have 3 air conditionings, and they were still working. He would have completely.
He would have lost it. Like, why are you doing
He would have been baffled by
Who
that.
cares about the efficiency?
And I've had them for the dead. 15 years I've had them. They're older units. They suck power, and they're going to go out. And they're going to go out in June. I guarantee you.
Yeah, right in the thick of the summer.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're in an emergency situation.
So after you left the picture, did he start using a property manager
He
then
did.
for the 110
Torrey
units?
Torrey
Okay.
Pines,
Yeah.
and he knew the original founder of Torrey Pines Property Management. Great organization, great people, great company. And then his broker is also no longer with us, but was kind of a San Diego legend. Jim Hendershaw would bring him these great listings, these pocket listings. I shared you. One was a 28 unit in El Cajon. The guy owned it, was an older guy out in Palm Springs, and one of the units had a drug interdiction. So they brought in like the SWAT team, and they pumped tear gas into this place, wrecked the unit down to the subflooring, the drywall, the acoustic ceiling. The unit beneath it had to be ripped out of the studs.
Wow.
And so Hendershaw knew that the owner was just done. The guy was in his late 70s and out in Palm Springs, and he goes and says, I got a guy, meaning my dad, that would probably take this off your hands. And the guy sold it to my dad for a song, and even took a little bit of a rap on it, rap loan around back, until he got it up to where it was revenuing enough to get legitimate paper from a legitimate bank.
Yeah.
So this was stuff that, was all new to me, but watching him do it and everything. And then I remember he would read all of the mortgages page by page. Like he'd have the entire thing.
Wow.
If it was a balloon, 7. If it was all the provisions hooked, Was the interest hooked to 7th district cost of funds? What was
Yeah.
the index pivot? I learned all that from him.
Mhm.
I mean,
Nice.
I learned all that from him. But he didn't have a mentor. The Navy was he went to the Naval Academy. So the Naval Academy became his mentor.
Yeah.
Detail oriented. Yeah, that's an amazing learning curve.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. You'd never expect it. But he did well at it, and he knew what to look for. Once it
Yeah.
got too big, and Tori was running everything, and he wasn't one to go through, reams of metrics and things, but
Yeah.
he would know where to go to look.
We work with so many self managers that are approaching retirement, finally tired of self managing, so they're finally reaching out and talking to a property manager. What was that transition like for your dad of giving up control of the management of the property over to someone
Not
else?
smooth. He did not like to give up control. My mom wanted out.
Yeah.
She wanted to go to triple
So
nets.
she was forcing.
She didn't want to go, running for 75-year-old people to be meeting with an organization like Torrey Pines about the minutia of a 100-unit complex in
Yeah.
downtown. That's a lot. I
Mhm.
mean, that's a lot, and so she wanted to get out of self-management. He didn't really want to so much, but you knew he needed to because stuff was kind of falling down around. But it was after that, it was really good. I mean, I never heard him complain about the fees or whatever, and and then, I never really heard them talk about you don't look at your management fees as a place to go start chopping, right? It's like I'm in dentistry or corporate dentistry, and so you don't look at your staff in a dental office.
No.
Let's just get rid of some staff.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, now you don't have anybody.
That's how you
Your
provide your
revenue's going to go
service.
down.
Right,
I
exactly.
guarantee you. So
Yeah.
I don't. They never really thought about it. It went fine.
Yeah.
They went fine, and it was different for him to lose control, but he was getting older.
Yeah. What was your mom's role during this whole time?
They had an interesting partnership, and they would go together. I think she just wanted to make sure that different personalities. He would, he was great at some of the things I discussed. She was more of a big visionary type person. Like when the 100-unit complex came up, she was the one that wanted to figure out a way to 1031 the stuff up in North County, get into this. It was a good deal. All the development was coming from downtown San Diego towards the freeway, which is now called East Park or something like that. It's just below, just west of the freeway by the railroad tracks. But my mom's role was to keep my dad engaged, and there was some arguing, but and I think that went away too when the management company came in.
He probably had to pick up some new hobbies once the management company came in and took away his day job, huh?
His hobby was working and making money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He didn't. I'm literally sitting here with you guys. If you had to put a gun in my head about what he didn't, he was very active in the church. That would be a hobby if you could call it that.
Mhm.
That was a thing for him. But he didn't golf. He didn't collect things. He didn't even really like to travel. I mean, I think that just because of his youth in Mississippi,
Yeah.
if you're not doing something to accumulate money and add value,
Just constantly
He
scared
didn't-
it's all going to go away.
perpetually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Perpetually.
So what was your mindset during this? Were you eager to get into investing yourself, or you were like, I don't want to touch this, and eventually you changed your mindset?
No, I was eager. I saw what it did for my family. I saw what it did for my parents. I saw what it did, just slow ownership. I've got a triplex and a duplex with you guys. You and I talk, and I in my office, I've got a block around an area of Phoenix, north of the 10, east of the 17, west of Scottsdale, and then I think my border is maybe northern all the way up. I don't know how far up I go, but I have a block. And that's where I want to be because it's still affordable.
Mhm.
It will grow. It's close to downtown. It's close to the airport. And that was the motivator for me is what I saw happen from a couple of rental houses and a gas station and literally 25 years later.
Mhm.
I mean, that's I don't think you can duplicate that in anything, right? I to my knowledge, I mean, unless you build a
crypto
business.
over the past 10 years, but who knows where
Yeah.
that's going.
Right,
for sure, man, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Ethereum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your first investment property?
I bought a condo in Oceanside. I was still living in an apartment. I was living in one of the apartments that I was working for my parents,
Mhm.
1 bedroom, and I bought a condo in Oceanside for $140,000 and in '98 maybe, and it was and then I rented it out.
So you're able to buy it as a primary residence, and
I rented it out immediately.
Yeah.
So I never lived in it. Oh, I did. I lived in it after I got married. That was our first home.
okay.
Our
We
first
can
home.
actually do own a property, I'm just not living there right now.
Right. Well, yeah, I very quickly, brought that up with her when she picked me up. Lights were flickering.
By
and,
the way.
yeah, by the way, and she was really scared, and I said, well, I have a property over here, a condo, So when we got married, we moved into that. But that was my first rental property, really, and then that's it. I went into corporate America. I had to get something a little bit different than what I was doing I wanted to make more money, than I was. I didn't want to. It wasn't like they weren't paying me, but I needed a bunch. If I wanted to have a family and everything, I needed more money.
Yeah.
And so went to corporate America, and then I was able to gather enough money and get myself in a position recently, about 4 years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago, maybe, where I bought. I knew I wanted to go into income property. I didn't even hesitate.
Mhm.
I probably overpaid for the triplex. Definitely overpaid for Highlander, the duplex. But by how much? Probably not very much. And I'm in the game now,
Yeah.
and I got a little wrap note, 4% wrap note on the one property, which I jumped at.
And if you have a 20-year time horizon, then
I'm not selling.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, maybe if I get another, 2 or 3 over the 10 years with you guys, then maybe something great comes in on a big, massive, complicated 1031,
Mhm.
right? That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a whole hyperleap from where I'm at now.
What was your decision process like to decide on Phoenix as a market? Like, a lot of our investors are lured by more cash flow in cheaper markets. Like,
I saw a city that in my lifetime has exploded, literally. Like I've been coming out here since the '90s,
Mhm.
early '90s, when there was no 101 loop up by Peoria. There was no nothing.
No, yeah.
And so you might say, well, yeah, it's already grown, but now you have the exodus from California, Washington. We see a lot of people are coming to Arizona for the temperate weather. I think there's a lot more growth. When we moved here, the west side still was predominantly farmland off the 303. That's all gone. Not all, but much of that is
Yeah.
gone. And I just see growth. And then I also see going back to the city, those areas around the city are going to get good
Mhm.
again,
Yeah.
right? Right by Phoenix Country Club, North High School there. Those are obviously, there's some really nice areas in there. But as it goes out, people will pay to be close to downtown, right?
Mhm.
They'll pay to be close to the airport.
Yep.
And those areas will gentrify.
Yep.
And it'll get better. I think it's a good place to be. Plus, I'm not a big fan of being far away from my properties. It's not my thing. Maybe that makes me unsophisticated, but
No.
like we if I wanted to drive by there to make sure it is well lit, clean, and it's a safe place that I would feel comfortable coming home and living in.
Yeah.
That's what I made all those places in Oceanside. I lit them up and painted them and made them look nice and did some things. We had people that were putting their laundry out over the. I outlawed that. You can't do that. And they were nice. They were nice. The rents went up, density went down.
No thoughts of moving into any of these duplexes or triplexes now, though?
No.
I mean, you could have rented one of those. I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, that's true. I could have, but my wife works at the local high school, so she's got to be relatively near her job, and I've got a 15-year-old at home, and then the two kids are coming back for the summer, so I needed more.
You need more
space
than
than
that,
I could get, but not a bad idea though. My dad would.
Yeah.
100%.
Did you ever toy with managing them yourself, or you knew going into it you were going to be hiring a property management company right away?
No, I never thought about it. I never thought about it. It's I don't want to do that. I'd like to have a relationship with the property management. I'd like to have a relationship with a good broker, like my dad did with Jim Hendershaw for years. And no, I never had any interest in that. I'd rather spend my energies doing, generating revenue somewhere else so I can acquire more properties.
Well said. That's what usually it comes down to. Is people are looking at the cost, when in reality, you look at the time
Yeah.
savings you have.
It frees me up to go run the things that I run on my own in the dental business.
Yeah, you could focus
I
on
don't-
your job, your career, and your investment mindset. What's the next
Yeah.
investment opportunity here?
Pay a little more attention to the next one I buy. So
Yeah.
I'm not just, here. I wanted to get in real quickly and get some revenue going, but the next one will have to be a little bit more specific.
What are you seeing in the market? Are you looking for, I know you said you've identified an area, so is it more just looking for the right opportunity in that area? Are you waiting for a certain timing? Or?
I think I'm waiting for, you and I have laughed about this. I'm waiting for when it's better for me to have the money in income producing properties than it is treasury bills. And when I can get 5%, 5.2 on a treasury bill right now, I don't. You guys may not want to hear that, but I'm reluctant to do that. I don't want to do that until it comes down, and I'm also a little frightened by the 7% money too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. Like we of course we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients too,
Yeah.
right? So like you got to do what's the smartest thing to do with your money.
And I'm a guy that like 7% is going to push me into the push zone. I'm
Mhm.
pushing on some of this stuff. If I put 50% down and I got 7% paper, that would be about a push.
Mhm.
You guys would know better than I would,
Yeah.
but somewhere in there, there's not going to be a lot of gravy.
Mm-hmm. No,
Uh,
yeah, to compare the cap rate that you can get off of multifamily versus what you're getting from a treasury, like it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
in a
make
lot of
sense right
cases
now.
Yeah.
And I also kind of hope that I have, some capital poised. I'm hoping that maybe there'll be a time where there's an adjustment. Nothing bad, nothing
Yeah.
terrible, but
Right.
just an adjustment where,
Mhm.
because it hasn't done a thing.
No.
It's stayed pretty much the same since you and I have been working together.
Yeah, it has. Prices have not dropped yet. There hasn't been pain in the market. We're seeing rents drop. Rents in multifamily are down 7% year over year. So that's the start of when prices start to drop because prices are related to rents.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
You've been in the industry for a long time. I think you mentioned at the top of this you have some pretty crazy tenant stories. You care to share your best one?
Yeah, okay, I got my most, and she was a really nice. I remember when I first moved into the property in Oceanside. There was an elderly woman that lived there on the bottom floor. This was a barrack style apartment. My dad would call them apartment houses.
Uh-huh.
I guess that's what they called them way back in the day.
Yeah.
Apartment houses is what he would call them. And I showed up there, and I'm moving my stuff in, and I parked, and I'm walking in the front, and she's out sweeping, the dirt in the middle of there's no grass. It wasn't bad. We had some work to do to make this thing look like it was someplace.
You hadn't whipped it into shape quite
I
yet.
wasn't to say, but come to find out, I walked back by had a little laundry facility. There was some chicken wire, and she had 3 or 4 chickens in there. She had chickens. She'd made her own farm, and it was good because you learned to kind of that you need to. A spoonful of sugar is going to be a whole heck of a lot. And so she came over, and she didn't speak a lot of English, and I'm kind of like, the pollo, and I realized I'm like, this woman, this is important to her. How am I going to do this?
yeah.
So you move slowly, right? You get in, you get the lay of the land. You don't kick the door in and start giving directives to everybody. So over a period of time, her daughter would come over, and then I developed a little bit of a relationship with her daughter where she trusted me to a degree, and I'm like, hey, listen, we can't have the chickens here. They can have airborne things, bad, and they can attract some wild animals that
Yeah.
might be dangerous, and we don't want that.
Coyotes
So I
roaming
kind of
around.
left. I kind of got her to go sell it. That was a fond story. Another fond story was the tear gas story where they kicked in the door. We bought the thing. I went over there. We had to pull everything out. When I say the rug interdiction people, they did the in through the window on the rope, and
Like an action movie.
yeah, that was a doozy. And then they just left. Like the owner was furious. Like
Yeah,
they
are we
packed
just
up
gonna
their
clean
stuff. They
this up,
gassed the
or-
guy's asset
Wow.
permanently.
Permanently.
Yeah, because that stuff doesn't come out of
No.
anything
No.
porous.
Uh-huh.
Anything porous.
And that's
Yeah.
it. They don't help out.
Yeah,
with
they just
anything,
left,
like,
man. They
no
got their
financial
dude.
responsibility. Wow.
So you know,
I guess that's a good reason why you should screen your residents before you place them in the property.
First,
right?
well, that was just a neglect. That was
Yeah.
absentee owner, probably not at least communicating with your property manager. I like you guys because you're always accessible, and I know you're there. And you know, if I have a question, I mean, which is rarely, but that's helpful. But I doubt this guy had talked to his property manager much,
Ever.
if at all, and didn't have a clue who was in any of. You know, why would he? He was out there, but.
Yeah.
Rented to a lot of Navy guys. Probably the best tenant I ever rented to was a corpsman in the Marine Corps. Lived right next to me. Best tenants I found were truck drivers that were gone.
Yeah.
They're great. You know, that I started.
As long as they don't sublease it while they're gone.
Yeah, that's true. And some of them, like I would ask, hey, you got any buddies? You know, I'll cut you a break. And these guys would go on these week-long excursions and stuff.
Then they could park their big rigs on the property when they were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure learning. Like, this has been great. You've had quite the experience in the industry, learning from your dad, and now on your own here.
I've been fortunate. Yeah,
We're
for
looking
sure.
forward to acquiring some more properties with you,
I
and
am
growing
too.
together in the valley
I
here.
was fortunate to find you guys, for sure.
Well, thanks so much for coming on
coming,
Landlord
man.
Confidential
Thank you.
today, Steve.
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.